Hello and welcome to episode 4 of MMO Weekly on YouTube, presented as always by MetsmerizedOnline.com. I'm your host, Sal Manzo, along with Mike Mayer, and we're joined today by special guest, host of Odyssey Sports Big Time Baseball, among other things, Cody Decker. Cody, thanks so much for taking some time with us.
No, thanks for having me. How you guys doing? Loving the setup, loving the intro music. I can't wait for the outro music. I can't wait for everything we're going to talk about. Let's talk some baseball, baby.
Love it. Mike, how you doing? You recovering from this first series loss of the year here?
Yeah, I mean, we've just been so accustomed to the Mets coming back, and they started to come back in the ninth inning. And with Lindor and Alonso coming up, you just had it's not like if they're going to win, like who's going to get the big hit or whatever. And it just didn't happen. They weren't going to win every series this year. Obviously, it stinks to lose like they did. But yeah, I mean, they kept fighting back like they have all year and almost pulled it off.
Yeah, no, and obviously we'll start there. The Mets lost their first series of the year. I'm sure Mets Twitter's come crashing down after that because you can't win them all, I guess, right? But Cody, going off of that, it was a tough series this weekend with Seattle. But, the Mets overall, they're off to a terrific start. And I just kind of want to get your thoughts on the team overall, to start the year. And if you think that they're kind of a contender in the, long-term in the National League now.
This is something I've actually been talking about quite a bit ad nauseum, especially in all the shows that you mentioned that I do. You know how it is as the Mets. You know how it goes as a Mets fan. I played for the Mets for 1 year in the organization in 2017. I have understood every Met fan plight in the world. I understand across town you got to deal with not only the Yankees, but you got to deal with Yankee fans as well. It's almost like, and here's like a combination of an insult and a complete compliment to Met fans. The amount of delusion to them is the best. But what I mean about their delusion is every year it's always we got this, guys. This is our year, I swear. But in the back of your mind, it's not the year. It's not the year. This year legitimately feels like the year. I wait for the bubble to burst every single year with the Mets. Even last year, the first year of Cohen, I got excited, but even then I was thinking it's still not there. That is not the case this season. It truly feels like August is not going to feel like Panic Town over in Queens. It feels like August is going to be polishing up about an eight game lead over in the NL East. This team's pitching staff has been amazing. They've stepped up. McGill has been phenomenal. Obviously, Scherzer. This team has actually been pitching phenomenal without Jacob deGrom. There is no reason not only could this team compete, this team should dominate their own division. I mean, they got to deal with a Marlins team that is a lot better than I think people are giving them credit for because they got a great pitching staff. You got an Atlanta Braves team that I truly think is better right now than they were last year when they won the World Series, even with a down Acuna at the moment. But they're a very, very good team. And the Phillies can put up 10 runs a game, but they have maybe the worst defense I've ever seen on any professional team ever by far in any level of professional baseball. And of course, you also have the Nationals, who are just there for everyone to beat up on this season. So there's no reason the team shouldn't do exceedingly well. The only team in National League I honestly think is better than them at the moment is the Dodgers, but come October, it's not about who the best team is. And even then, it's not like the Dodgers are that much better than the Mets. Hell, the Mets pitching staff is better than the Dodgers pitching staff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I wanted to kind of bring up the pitching, and it has been so good. And obviously, today Carrasco kind of had a bad outing there, but, the Mets tried to slug it out. I know Tyler McGill just landed on the 15-day IL with the biceps inflammation. Might, kind of tell the story why he didn't pitch so well the last time out. With DeGrom now presumably being out till after the All-Star break, do you worry now that pitching staff that started out so well, obviously anchored by Scherzer and McGill at the top, do you worry that it might be getting a little thin here now, as we head into, the thick of May and into June?
I'd worry about everybody in the league, to be honest with you, not just the Mets. I mean, of course, it's easy to start panicking, but they have a decent amount of depth, and they're not being hit by the injury bug any worse than any other team is. I mean, I just mentioned that in league rival in the Braves, they just lost Acuna. Look at the White Sox; they're a team that's fighting for a first place spot right now, and they have an entire all-star team on the IL for the first month of the season. So it's not really time to panic. If this is happening in mid-August, if this comes around September and you lose a Tyler McGill and you find out you don't have a Scherzer or a DeGrom, then it might be time to really start to worry. But right now, early May, mid-May, I think we could all kind of relax. If you're going to lose somebody, let's lose them right now and get them back when it's time to really roll.
Absolutely. Mike, let me get
Yeah,
your
and I
thoughts a little bit.
think it sounds, at least preliminary, sounds pretty minor for McGill. It was more of a, hey, wow, this is kind of weird for him because he hadn't felt something like that before. And then he went and got the MRI. And yeah, it sounds minor. And I mean, David Peterson, he can't slide in to start tomorrow, but ultimately he can slide into the rotation and help the Mets. And he's pitched really well at the major league level this year. So like Cody said, the Mets do have that good depth, even with DeGrom out now, McGill on the injured list too. They have that type of depth that will still keep them in games. And if you need to, I mean, it's early, but you can always go out and get a depth piece, a waiver claim, or some small trades like that, which I'm sure the Mets are kind of looking out catcher wise right now. I mean, that's the other injury that they just had with James McCann fracturing the hamate bone. So that's the type of thing. I mean, I don't know if Cody's dealt with it, but as hitters that have dealt with it, it's, even if you say 6 weeks, he's not going to be 100% swinging the bat for quite a while. So I certainly think that's one thing that Billy Epler will look to upgrade pretty quickly if you're able to. Again, it's pretty tough in May, but with waiver claims, that type of thing.
You got to look around. It's going to be tough to find it, like you said, early in the season. Hell, mid-season it's going to be kind of hard because catching can come at a premium, not unlike pitching can come at a premium when it comes to that all-star trade deadline. Because quite frankly, everybody needs extra catching. I honestly bring this up all the time. Take a guy who's an all-star catcher in like Yasmani Grandal. Before he got to the White Sox, every October, he was healthy, but not starting for the Los Angeles Dodgers. They were starting Austin Barnes. They were giving up that offensive threat because they needed a more sure-handed catcher behind the plate. Everybody in the league is going to be looking for that.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up. And, you know, I know people have brought up Wilson Contreras and things like that. I absolutely don't see the Mets, you know, having even the capital to want to give up something like that, especially with Alvarez and the weight in there. But, you know, Cody, real quick, you talked about the delusion of Met fans. You know, I see the Tyler McGill injury news, and in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'll see you in August. Like that's how this goes. I probably won't see him again for 2 months. Hopefully it's different. I believe you guys, and hopefully it's not too bad there. But, you know, I guess life as a Met fan, like you feel like when it rains, it pours. That's always like the first reaction. But I wanted to kind of move on from the Mets a little bit there and kind of talk a little bit now to the umpiring. I know you've been very outspoken as far as like the umpiring so far this season's been, you know, particularly subpar. You know, behind the plate's one thing, but in total or in general, it's been pretty bad. You know, I'm just wondering like what you think the main issue is.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's one, first things first, I don't think the umpires are necessarily worse. I think there's a much bigger magnifying glass on them than there ever has been. And by the way, umpiring is a thankless job. But at the end of the day, if I know your name as an umpire, you're not a good umpire. You should be as noticeable as a chair. Like the other day, what happened with Mad Bum and getting tossed out of that game, that was a clown show. I've never seen something like that outside of Joe West, of which he did do to Mad Bum one time in the most ridiculous fashion ever. I know, I was in the game. I don't know what else to say other than if I notice you, you're bad. Stop letting me notice you. And if this is something that's going to lead to an automated strike zone, listen, that's not a perfect system yet either. That's something that needs to be adjusted. But we're living in a world where the metaverse is becoming a thing. Augmented reality is a thing. How do we not have some sort of system where we have like a goggle system where they can see some sort of augmented like strike zone for them to help them out at least? Like, it doesn't have to be balls and strikes called by an umpire by an actual box, but how come an umpire couldn't see the same digital box that we see on television every night?
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Mets game last week when Bassett pitched and Chad Fairchild missed a call. I mean, at least he was honest enough to know that his bad call was so egregious that he actually said something to Bassett and was like, "That's my bad," which that's great. You don't see something like that very often. But then Fairchild was at third base and completely botched a call fair foul call the next day,
I've
and then I was
got a
at
story
first
for you.
base and botched another call, and it's just like, yeah, well, Mets fans definitely know who Chad Fairchild is now.
I got a story for you. Jeff Francoeur, former Met, told me a story one time, and I love this. And I don't remember the umpire, so we'll just make up a name. We'll say it was Larry. Jeff Francoeur comes in the batter's box. I don't know what team he was playing for at the time. Might have been the Braves. Could have been the Mets. Could have been the Phillies. Who knows? Steps in the box and gets rung up on a strike 3 call that was way outside, and just goes crazy. Every obscenity known to mankind thrown at this guy, just nonstop, and it obviously gets run out of the game. 2 weeks later, Larry's behind the plate in the next game that he's playing, and sitting there, and Larry comes up to him as he's digging in the box, and Larry leans over to Jeff Francoeur and says, "Hey, Frenchie, I just want you to know, I saw the call. It was about 4 inches off the plate. I shouldn't have run you, and I shouldn't have thrown you out. That's my mistake, and I'm very, very sorry. I hope you forgive me." He's just like, "Thank you, Larry. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Appreciate you." Digs in, first pitch. Ball outside by about 4 inches. Strike 1. Damn it, Larry! Oh, and Larry apparently looked at him and said, "Oh my God, did I do it again?"
Oh my goodness. If only Angel Hernandez had the humility. That's a name. I don't like to bring it up all the time, but like, do you think he's someone that just fully embraced the heel turn and said, "I'm going to do this badly on purpose because it seems people get to talk about it and I'm not going to lose my job"?
You are such a bad umpire that when any umpire is bad, your name trends on Twitter.
Oh my goodness.
I
It's
mean,
true.
when the Joe West news came out that he was retiring, I tweeted it out, and that was like one of the biggest tweets of mine that blew up this entire offseason. Like, everyone was cheering and all of this, like, holy crap, Joe West is finally retiring. Like, this is one of the best things that's happened to baseball since Rob Manfred's been the commissioner. It's like, but that's because that's what Joe West did. He had that reputation, and I guess now Angel Hernandez he's got the top step now.
It's amazing that it's amazing that we're debating on who like the most fancy and the most dynamic umpire is right now, ruining ball games for everybody to see. And the funny thing is, I believe Angel, as far as I know, is actually a pretty well liked guy. Believe it or not, it's just he's ruining games. It's the worst. But to be fair, I work in TV and radio now. It's great fodder to talk about because
Right.
at the end of the day, I don't know when Major League Baseball is going to make this move to some sort of automated strike zone, but they should. They have more technology than they know what to do with. At least give the technology on the field to the umpires to maybe use in some sort of capacity. I don't know why they're not making it easier for umpires to do their jobs.
Yeah, so to touch on that a little bit, because I mean, a lot of what I do is cover the minor leagues, and you see it now twice this week. Syracuse Mets actually had instant. Well, no, that was the a different rule we'll get to. That was the pitch clock, which is also a timer for the hitters. They had two. They struck out twice in the same inning. The batter did because they didn't get to the plate in time.
That's surprising because that rule was put into place in the minor leagues years ago.
Mhm.
And I did get a strike called on me one time because there is some flaws to the rule. The one time I got a strike called on me was I was walking to the box like normal. I was waiting for him to throw down to second base. So I was on second base. I start digging in the box and he goes strike 1. I said, "What?" He's like, "You're not in the box in time." I'm like, "I can't get in the box till he throws to second base. Give me a ball." Like, that's
Wow.
not, and that was a flaw to the rule. And then, quite frankly, umpires would soften on it. I haven't seen a lot of balls or strikes called on that rule change in years. So either the hitter was being egregiously slow getting into the box, or this umpire was just being so to the book that you still have to have some amount of savvy as an umpire or be around baseball. If you can't just work around the rules and just kind of understand and get it, like if it's going too long, call a strike. But to be like looking at the clock and there's no buzzer, there's no shot clock buzzer. This is not a basketball game. It's pretty much there are rules that we deal with in baseball every day that are loosely defined. That is another rule that is loosely defined. A check swing is not a real thing. It's the most loosely defined thing in the world. It's just up for interpretation for what any umpire decides at first base, which is great because we're talking about how bad umpires are.
Yeah, so to get back to, I want to talk about the home plate thing real quick. So St. Lucie Mets, they have it so where if you have what at the plate you think is they called a strike and you think it's actually a ball, you can challenge it.
Wow.
So what you do is the manager tells him real quick that you can challenge it, and the ump goes into his ear and goes up, and they tell him whether he was right or not. I mean,
How long does it take?
It's almost instant that he finds out whether he's right or wrong. It's kind of weird seeing it, but I can't remember the exact amount. I think it's like 4 or 5 that you get each game, but teams use them and they try to like pick their spots, like obviously with runners on and stuff like that. But you can challenge balls and strikes.
Interesting. I don't hate it. I don't know if that's the way to go about it, but maybe there's something there. Maybe I don't know if you use the same challenge system. I'd have to actually look up the rules, but it seems like something Major League Baseball will eventually get to. And
wow,
oh boy, I feel like games are going to go to 7 hours long. It might be bad.
Well, yeah,
Maybe don't do this.
It's kind of counterintuitive because a lot of the rules are like, hey, let's speed it up, like all the pitch clock stuff and everything else. Let's speed the game up. And then the more replay you add, you're obviously slowing the game down even more. So it's like we've talked about this, Sal, before. What does Major League Baseball want to do? Do they want to speed the game up, or do they want to add more offense? Or what exactly do they think they want to do?
It's cyclical. It changes every couple of years. You know, like the ball will be dead right now. I'm sure the ball will be perfectly live in about a month and a half. I don't know how magically it's going to happen. I guess the weather will change just so much that everyone's just going to set new records and home runs come June. Wait for it. Just wait for it.
And if you ask Mets Twitter again, they would say that Rob Manfred's been putting out some Super Bowls everywhere else but Citi Field, especially this past weekend. So, you got more conspiracy going on there. But this is actually a nice segue. We're talking about rule changes. Obviously, next year, we know that some, changes coming, especially to the shift. And there's obviously, other rules that are being, used in the minor leagues right now. I was just wondering, kind of particularly on the shift, particularly banning or reducing it, whatever. Just want to get your thoughts on that there. If you're a fan of it or you're not, or whatever.
I'm kind of on the fence on it, to be quite honest. I understand both sides on the coin of this, but the old school guys are like, we'll just hit against the shift. It's not exactly one, exciting to watch, exciting to do, also all that easy to do, because if you played in 1992 and you're telling me to beat the shift, I love that you think I can just hit a 98 mile per hour two-seamer that has outrageous spin rate on my hands. Everyone throws that now, and you saw maybe one guy in your whole career do that at the time. Now everybody does it like it's nothing. I can't hit that through the right side. It's not necessarily possible. So there's a combination of a lot of aspects to it. So maybe making some parameters so it's not so egregious. Maybe making sure that everybody is, within the limits of the infield. Perhaps making sure there's at least one person on the left side of the field if you're going to play a left-handed shift. I don't know the right answer. And if at the end of the day this is all about being entertaining, is the shift making baseball less entertaining? I find it quite interesting when I see an outrageous shift and I see someone actually hit through it and beat it, but I also can understand if somebody hits a line shot that would go directly in between the second baseman and the shortstop. I mean, fans get kind of robbed of some extra base hits that way.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Cohen touched on it the other day. Like, he understands wanting to change it for aesthetics, because, like, that's when people think of baseball, they think of the shortstop and the shortstop hole, third, second. But then he's like, also, but you're taking away some strategy of the game. And that's what Keith Hernandez was talking about too. And then, I mean, if you listen to Keith Hernandez, he's generally pretty old school in his baseball takes, but he didn't like the fact that you're taking away the strategy of the manager and the analytics team and everyone else.
Me neither. But could you hear me out on this? I'm just going the flip side. I'm not saying this is the right answer either, because I totally agree with that exact. But here I am going to torpedo something I agree with. Major League Baseball is trying to grow. Have you ever taken somebody that's never watched baseball to a baseball game and try to explain to them baseball for the first time? Okay, now add shifting it. not only did that just blow up the last 30 minutes of you trying to explain baseball to him, now you got to explain the shift, and that's going to be another 45 minutes. And that this person is already tuned out and doesn't care about baseball. And just like that, we lost a fan for life. It's just, we're trying to make the game more accessible. And that's something I think Major League Baseball has the biggest problem on. I don't think it's an analytics thing. I don't think it's definitely not a talent thing. Baseball players are more talented than they've ever been in the history of the sport. I think it's just an accessibility thing. Baseball, hell, as kids, baseball's expensive. That's a big problem in accessibility. Blackout restrictions, that's a problem for accessibility. Just field space, that's a problem for accessibility. Like, baseball is become difficult to access, and that's Major League Baseball's truthfully biggest problem.
No, and I think that's a great point. I mean, that's really not something I've ever thought of. Yeah, if you're teaching someone like the game and you're trying to explain, well, hey, he's the shortstop, but he's in,
why is he in right field?
Yeah, that is a great point to the third baseman. Why is he playing shortstop? Yeah, it's just, it certainly would be confusing for them to even try to grasp of why this guy is not actually where you said he is.
But that being said, I don't hate shifts. I like shifts fine.
Yeah.
I get them. There's a reason they do them. You know, it's all probability charts. I mean, it's just, you're basing it off a probability of where this particular guy is going to hit the baseball. Obviously, you're going to play the probability. If I'm playing craps and I know for a fact that if I just play the 6 and the 8, my mathematical odds are that much better. But just because the rules say I can play 1 and 10, doesn't mean I have to play 1 and 10. It's just, it's all probability. And I understand that. And there is no right answer or wrong answer. It's just, what are we going to do? Pick one.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm someone who doesn't, take away strategy. I've always put it as, is comparing it to football on, 3rd and long, bringing your safety up to blitz, not allowing them to do that, or putting like 10 men in the box or something like that. It's limited in strategy, but it's interesting what you said as far as explaining to folks, like it makes it even harder. So it's a lot of added wrinkles. And I guess, we have a lot of faith in the people in charge ahead that can do it. That's a whole nother story. But we'll see what they could do. But other than, the shift stuff, I was wondering, kind of what your feelings are as like a universal grip substance for pitchers. Obviously guys have been getting hit a lot this year. Get pitchers saying they can't really hold on to the ball. It's been inconsistent. I know Bassett early on was super vocal about that. I was just kind of wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
There's already been a solve to the problem. It's over in Japan. They have a baseball that works perfectly fine. Darvish brought it over. Other players threw with it. It was perfectly fine. This is the most solvable issue in the history of baseball. I don't understand why we're here. Whenever these things happen, I always just ask why. And the answer is usually money for some reason. I don't know where the money is that's being made or not made for this scenario. I just know somehow the reason this hasn't been fixed is because someone's benefiting financially. There's no reason for this. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Someone's benefiting.
Yeah, it
is interesting that Major League Baseball is the only sport in the United States that owns the ball that they play with.
Yes.
And that is problematic for many, many reasons. But this is the scenario we're in. I think Major League Baseball just needs to, fully be transparent when they do make adjustments to the baseball, because really the controversy isn't that they make adjustments to the ball. It's that they don't notify people that they do it. That's kind of the issue. And when you're playing with maybe a different batch of baseballs, or you're playing with a new batch of baseballs with an old 5 baseballs thrown in there, which has been something that has been reported, whether or not it's all true, whether you are on board with everything is a massive conspiracy behind this all. I don't think it's not necessarily a conspiracy. I think any adjustment they've made may have gone a little further than they meant it to go, and they were caught with their pants down and they just didn't want to admit it, which in actuality just made things worse.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue. Is they didn't just come out and tell us. It's like someone from Fangraphs or Baseball Prospectus or someone else is going through and determining the balls, and that's how we find out. And then I remember the last time we had the winter meetings, I think it was in San Diego, and they had people from the league answering questions about stuff. And a majority of the entire conversation and questions was about the baseballs, because it had been found out recently that the entire year MLB changed the baseball and just told no one. So we had to have people find out about it and then write about it. And then it's just, yeah, if you're going to do something, tell us. Just tell everyone that you're going to do something. So if they're changing it, then the pitchers have the opportunity to know that and to work with that baseball and to know that they're working with something different. It's just Major League Baseball continuously just not doing the right thing, essentially.
But here's the thing. At the end of the day, because of Major League Baseball's kind of just lack of transparency for truly no reason other than to just do it, it just causes the problem. We're talking about it now. If we just knew, they just told us, here, we changed the baseball, is a little more dead. It's a little more dead than we want it. We're going to try and liven it up, but we don't want to go too far. And then if it goes too far, hey, went too far, our mistake. We're going to try and double back. We wouldn't be saying anything. We'd just be like, okay, get it right. Just for the love of God, get it right. Instead, we're just talking about why are they lying or hiding it? There's no reason. Hell, it might not even be that they're hiding it. It might just be a flat out quality control issue, right, where they're making the balls in Costa Rica. Or maybe it's a shipping issue.
Right.
Now there's reports that every single team is now using humidors. So maybe the humidor factor is adding in a certain thing, because really humidors were only initially supposed to be put into places with high altitudes like Colorado's. Right. So you can even out the high altitude factor, but I don't know. And that's the problem. No one does.
Yeah, no, and if you leave anything from watching MMO Weekly, it's that communication is key. That's what we're preaching here. So, Rob Manfred, MLB, just take a listen. Just tell us. That's all we care about. But before, Cody, I want to ask some questions about your playing career and things like that. But before we get into it, you're a West Coast guy. You watch a lot of West Coast baseball. We're Northeasterners. It's cold here most of the time. It's Eastern time. We have the AL West in town. Obviously, the Mariners, we're in town this past weekend, but the Mets are playing the AL West this year. So I wanted you to kind of, give us maybe some names besides maybe the obvious guys, Trout, Ohtani, that we should look out for, rising stars or whatnot within the AL West when we're watching this year.
There's a lot of good players over there. And yeah, I understand you guys not getting a chance to watch the AL or NL West. I mean, when games end here at 10 o'clock, and that's way too late for you guys. I wake up in the morning to baseball games. It's nice. Awesome. But yeah, the Mariners, obviously, they're a really talented team. In fact, I took a flyer out on them at the beginning of the season at plus 450 to win the AL West. I really, really dig the team. They've kind of stumbled out the gate a little bit, and they're going to get ready and go over and play Toronto. And they just announced today they're not going with the full squad, which is not going to help them for a team that's trying to get, to the playoffs for the first time in 20 years. Angels, obviously, Ohtani, the Trouts, those two are the best in baseball. In fact, I'm going to go a little bit further. Trout is the best player who ever lived. I'm going to die on this hill. He's the greatest player who's ever walked the face of this earth. He does everything better than everybody by just that much more. Ohtani, it's once in a generation is what we're seeing with what he's doing. Unbelievable. Not to mention, on top of that, you got Rendon, who is able to hit home runs on the opposite side of the plate. There's nothing else you can say other than this team has been magic to start the year. Their pitching staff has been really good. Lorenzen has looked like an ace. Ohtani, obviously, he can do on the mound, but this team has looked great. Syndergaard has looked like old Syndergaard. If he could stay on the mound and stay healthy, who knows what this team can do? But then you also got to go play the Texas Rangers. I don't think you need to worry. All you got is Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. Yep. If you just, don't throw to them, you should win by 20. Outside of that, you got the Houston Astros, hottest team in Major League Baseball, Yordan Alvarez. I don't know what else to say to you guys. When you face against the Astros in about a couple of days or within the next week and a half, Yordan Alvarez is probably going to hit 4 home runs. Just get it in your head now, let it sink in, and hope you guys just ink out a few more runs, because the Astros are still good. I don't know how. They just even doesn't matter who they lose, they just win.
Yeah, it's a great division, and someone you didn't get a chance to mention Taylor Ward too from the Angels. I mean,
Taylor Ward, Brandon Marsh.
Yeah, I mean, the Angels have. I mean, Joe Adell's back in AAA, but I
Yeah.
mean, they have talent, and it's fun to see them finally being good. I mean, this is what baseball is waited for, to have Ohtani and Trout healthy and them winning, and they're finally doing it. And they got pieces like Ward and Marsh, and I mean, like Syndergaard. They have a great bullpen too with Loop and Iglesias and Tempera. I mean, that's a good bullpen,
They've
and
done a great job to restack that team. Hell, last year in the shortened 20-round draft, the first year of that 20-year draft, they drafted 20 arms. So you better believe the Angels knew where they were lacking as an organization. And hell, they just called somebody up who got drafted last year in the 11th round, and he pitched a gem of a ball game.
Yeah. It's fun to watch, and it'll be even more fun to kind of see what they do at the deadline. It's fun to see that they're have a chance to do something at the deadline. It's every year you wait for it for the Angels, but that division is tough. Like Seattle has struggled, but that's still a good team. The Rangers have struggled, but they have some pieces. But I mean, the Astros are really good, and beyond Jordan, I mean, you have Bregman and Altuve, and they have a great pitching staff too. I mean, it's not after Verlander, it's not like that big name pitching staff, but with Valdez and Javier and a bunch of other guys, it's just a great all around pitching staff. So it's a tough division, and of course, this is the year that the Mets have to play them.
Yep. Yes, it is. But I wouldn't worry too much. I really think this Mets team is good. Like the young guys have really come into their own. It looks like McNeil is back to being the all-star caliber McNeil. Lindor got out of his freshman slump with the team. Even if his freshman slump was still a solid year, now he looks like a superstar again. Marte has been a breath of fresh air on that team. I love this team. I love seeing Tomas Nido getting some innings back behind the plate. He's a really good receiver back there. I'm a big Guillorme fan. I love playing with that guy. There's nothing about Guillorme I don't love. The guy is a meme machine. I don't know. It's a great team. Dom Smith. I love me some Dom Smith. Like, I'm thrilled he's getting a shot to play. Hell, I think Dom Smith can go up there and accidentally hit 35 home runs this season.
It's funny because we had Guillorme on our list to talk to you about, just because you guys played in Binghamton together. Just kind of the things you see from him, like on a daily basis. I know I've only seen him a couple of times, like taking BP or during BP, like him fielding balls and stuff. And it's crazy to watch what he can do with his hands and just the quickness. It's unparalleled, really, from what we've seen from a Mets standpoint since Ray Ordonez.
I do have a complaint. I'd like him to get in better shape. I really would, but I do think hands-wise, there's no one maybe better. Maybe around the game. He's just got magical hands. Not to mention offensively, the guy just can handle the bat. He can drive up pitch counts better than just about anyone I've ever played with. He's a special talent. I hope he realizes he's a special talent.
That's fun. Listen, Luis, he looks good. I've made this comment to friends and stuff like that. He posts pictures. He looks svelte. He looks good. He just might be a bad body uniform guy. I think we got to maybe give that to him. It happens. But I see what you're saying. It's all good. But Luis got the hands. Hopefully he can, pick things up a little bit more.
Amazing hands, dude. Yeah. This dude, Guillorme is so good. Like I truly think Guillorme, if you give him a real shot to play every day, could be a guy that hits 330 in the big leagues, battles for batting titles type of hitter, and eventually be an all-star second baseman. He could do it. He's that good.
Wow. That's wild. And, obviously, you played with him. So, we wanted to kind of hear about your time in the minors, some of your favorite moments, if there was any great pranksters while you played with, and just kind of talk about the life of a minor leaguer, riding the bus, so to speak, and what that journey's like.
Ask away. Yeah. What do you want to know?
Well, I want to first know, kind of like I said before, as far as were there any great pranksters, any great stories as far as that goes, guys that you played with that kind of went over the top there?
Well, yeah, me. That was the prankster. No one else pranked. I mean, that was me.
What was your best prank then? The best one you can tell us.
I'll tell you all of them. I don't care.
Give us your top three then.
I mean, the most famous one was probably, obviously when I convinced Jeff Francoeur that our pitcher was deaf for a month.
Oh man.
And that video went viral for like a couple million views. That went
Yeah.
well. The other time I locked Jeff Francoeur in our manager's bathroom for hours before the game. And then he had to escape through the ceiling. That was that also video went pretty well. I remember a teammate of mine. I can't remember. Okay, yeah, I remember. I took he removed his locker from the locker room, and I put it on the pitching mound, and I locked all of his things under the bottom thing with a new lock that I locked, and I hid the key in a certain spot, but I broke it up and I told him where the key was. But I told him via a riddle
Oh
that was
man.
broken up into 4 parts that I hid in different spots around the stadium. And so he had to go from stadium spot to stadium spot to read the riddle. And then he had to figure out the riddle, which he found out was the answer was key. The answer was chair, which the key was underneath his chair, which is
Oh my
where
god.
the locker was.
That's
So he had to go and
amazing.
open up the locker. He got his stuff. I think he wheeled his locker back in at some point. I don't know.
Oh
That was a good
man.
one. I froze his clothing one time too, mid-game. We had a meat locker, so I dumped all his. He got there early. I grabbed all his clothes from that day, dunked it in water, and then I hung it up in the meat locker.
Oh
Then when the
man.
game was ending, I had the clubby go get it in the 8th inning and hang up just sheets of brick ice in his locker. That was a good one.
So did guys like try to avoid you, like avoid these type of pranks? Like were they like trying to get away
No,
from
they would
all-
they would usually needle me on to do if somebody like did a faux pas, they're like, "You're gonna get him, right, Deck?" I'm like, he's on the list.
He's on the list. Oh man. How important is it to have a guy like that in the clubhouse that keeps things loose, fun, having guys laugh, especially, maybe when there's times that you're losing ball games, guys are skidding or whatever. How is important to have that kind of guy in the clubhouse?
Very, especially when you're in the AAA level, because if you are on a team that, is not winning, especially AAA itself does not lend itself to good vibes, to say the
Right.
least. It's a
Right.
lot of guys that feel as though they've been screwed their whole career. And by the way, those guys are usually right. They're trapped. There's nothing they can do. It doesn't matter about how good they're playing. If you can be successful in AA, you can be an all-star in the big leagues. Period. There is not that much of a differential between those players. It's simply the job availability, which there simply isn't any. You have to have either somebody at the big league level play bad or get hurt or get moved to a different organization. Those 26 jobs are about as coveted as it gets. And I mean, do you see a whole lot of turnover on every team every year? It's 1-2 players in the lineup every single season. So it's
Right.
not like these jobs are coming up available every day. And Major League Baseball also hasn't expanded in 20 years, which is also, I think, a separate problem. There's a lot to it. So having a guy that can keep things loose, having a guy that could remind people that it is a game, because it does get very monotonous. Hell, when I was with the Mets, I had to start the season in Binghamton, and that was a tough pill for me to swallow, to have to go to AA and after just being in the big leagues. And I went there for about a month, and Binghamton is not my favorite place. I'm not going to lie to you. I like the stadium enough. It rained every 20 seconds. I've never seen so many rainouts in such a short amount of time. I was very thrilled to get moved over to Vegas, back to the PCL, where I was very used to playing for years. But even that clubhouse needed guys to keep things loose. In that clubhouse had some prospects. That clubhouse had Dom Smith. It had Gavin Cicchini, who was a prospect at the time. It had Plawecki, who was a prospect at the time. It had Ahmed Rosario, who was a prospect at the time. And the team was not playing well, and a lot of the prospects weren't playing great. So that clubhouse was not lending itself to the most friendly atmosphere. So that's where you got to bring in a couple of guys like me and a few others to kind of keep it loose and remind them, hey, Dom, you're going to the big leagues no matter what you do. Oh, also, you're incredible. Why don't you go hit 350 like you're capable? And then he did, because he's really, really good.
Yep. That's awesome. And, you mentioned obviously you played the Mets, with the Mets for a year. I was just can you tell us a little bit what it was like playing under that regime? Obviously, you weren't there for the turnover or anything, but I was just curious to hear what it was like kind of playing under the old regime and in that organization then.
I have nothing negative to say, really. Here's the negative thing I could say, and this is a negative, but I can assume this has been fixed a little bit. At the time, 2017, I have never played for and to this day, a more messy organization. As far as a front office was concerned at the time, it very much a lot of turnover happening, a lot of front office turnover in the minor league side. No one really knew whose job was what. And when I would ask, I couldn't get a straight answer. So if I was like, hey, I've been sitting for 2 weeks. I understand Dom's got to play, but if the goal is to sell me to Japan, you can't sell me to Japan if you don't play me in Vegas.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm like, hey, who do I need to speak to? And like, oh, you have to call our field coordinator. I said, okay, I called the field coordinator. He's like, no, you have to call our head of player development. Okay, call head of player development. He's like, actually, who you really need to speak to is the field coordinator. I'm like, well, great. He just had me call you. Who is in charge here? Like, I don't have a problem. Just tell me who to speak to. Like, we're adults. I need to speak to someone in charge about my career because this isn't working for me. And I never got an answer at any point. It was just kind of a messy organization at the time. And obviously things have improved. And by the way, when I say messy, yeah, it was messy, but every single person I worked with was wonderful. Like,
Right.
every front office person I met was a great person who genuinely was doing everything they could for everybody they could. I think roles at the time, because the organization was in a borderline kind of disarray,
Right.
I think roles were so loosely defined that nothing was really getting done. And everyone was more than capable. I just didn't think there was somebody at the top laying down the law, and I don't think that's the case anymore. This is an organization. If Buck Showalter is at the head of this snake is operating just fine.
Yeah, I think,
Absolutely.
and to your point, even after a couple years after, I mean, even kind of up to last year, they had some, well, like you talking about turnover. I mean, between GMs that the Mets have gone through and managers and just, I mean, lower level front office folks and minor league coordinators they've gone through too. Yeah, it's even right up to this year, it's been kind of messy in the minor leagues where I've talked to agents where they're like they wanted to talk to someone too, and it was kind of the same thing. It's like, well, who am I supposed to talk to? And you get a number, and it's like, no, not talk to us. Everyone we've talked to, like we talked to Brian Hayes, who helps kind of run that coordination now for the Mets. And we talked to Chris Newell, who's the bench coach for Brooklyn. And yeah, it definitely seems like all of that, not just from like a Buck standpoint, but just from a front office standpoint, has really, really been managed to a point where everyone is finally on the same line of communication, which, yeah, I mean, it's obviously you want to have someone like Buck at the major league level, but to develop these players and to get the next crop of big leaguers, you need to have that type of communication all the way through the minor leagues so that they know what they're doing and they're improving, and they're not worrying about these little things like let their agents worry about and stuff like that. So I think it's great to see that the Mets organization is kind of fully going in the right direction.
Seems like it. Really does seem like it. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of prospects they're able to generate over these next 5 years as well. You hear the phrase the Rays model, and there's only really three teams that use the quote unquote Rays model, and that's the Dodgers, Giants, and the Rays. If the Mets can get a front office that really is turning out a minor league side that can generate not just big leaguers for the Mets, but also keep in mind every single minor leaguer is legitimate capital to trade for a potential superstar, a potential arm that they're going to need coming into this August. So if this organization can, develop the way they could and should, there's no reason why the Mets shouldn't be a self-sustaining model forever. I know it's easy to look at the Dodgers and be like, oh, the payroll. Let's keep in mind and look up and down that lineup a little bit. Cody Bellinger is a drafted Dodger. Gavin Lux, drafted Dodger. Clayton Kershaw, drafted Dodger. Max Muncy was a released Oakland A minor leaguer that the Dodgers picked up and turned into Max Muncy. Same with Justin Turner, a cast off from the Mets, who is now a superstar Justin Turner. Those guys were signed on minor league deals that eventually got huge contracts. So it's not like the Dodgers are going out like the mid 90s Yankees and just buying all the superstars. Yeah, they traded for Mookie Betts and signed him to an extension, but keep in mind they traded away Alex Verdugo and 4 other high capital minor leaguers, which is something that the Mets could eventually get to. So yeah, do the Dodgers have a high payroll? Yeah. But look how much they've developed and able to move around the league. Like, the Dodgers are the Rays, but with a pocketbook.
Well, and I think you're kind of seeing, like you mentioned with the Giants now, the Giants are kind of that middle point where obviously they still have their payroll is pretty sizable, but they got there and they're getting into the winning ways by producing talent and using that capital to get pieces. And just from a development standpoint, I mean, they're churning out pitching like crazy. They're getting guys off the scrap heap or that are 4 or 5 and turning them into aces. And then they're going to, I mean, they're continually doing that every year. So, I mean, that's how you keep winning. That's how you sustain winning.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see how the Dodgers have been able to maintain it the way they have in every year after year after year. But again, there's no reason why the Mets couldn't do the exact same thing. That front office has got a very good idea of what they're doing. I'm really excited to see what they can do with that on that minor league side. I think the Mets are in astonishingly good hands.
No, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head with the Dodgers. I completely agree with that there. And, everyone we've talked to now, kind of the minor league side, it seems like that's what's happening. That, putting in a winning attitude, philosophy, and developing players to the best they can. So I'm excited for that. And it sounds like, the Mets went from the customer service line at Bob's to, Neiman Marcus. So we're very happy about that. Very good. So, last couple things I got for you, Cody. We don't want to keep you here all night, but I did want to ask you just what it was like playing in the World Baseball Classic and Team Israel, what that experience was like. And, your thoughts on kind of international baseball as a whole. And just, to close it out, just a couple of your favorite moments from your playing career.
World Baseball Classic, playing for Israel was an honor. Loved it. I still maintain a great relationship with Team Israel. I can't wait to see what they do in this next thing. I don't know who's going to be managing the team. I did tell them I would be interested in managing the team, which they should. Hell, they might even be able to convince me to play again if they wanted me to come back and play. I would come out of retirement to play in that. I wasn't very interested in playing in the Olympics, to be honest. There was a couple of reasons why. One, COVID hit, so that kind of made things a little bit. And then once learning that they had to qualify, and I couldn't go to Europe to go help the team qualify for the Olympics because I was doing radio and TV at the time, and then after they qualified, COVID hit. I couldn't get citizenship in time. And I was just like, you know what? And no one's going to be at the games or watching the games, and the games won't be televised. It's just, I just thought it was a losing capability. So I decided to wait. I loved it. I loved the experience. My teammates, to this day, is the best group of guys I've ever played with. Just to throw names out there, Nate Fryman is one of the great people in all of the history of baseball. Ryan Lavarnway, same thing. Ty Kelly, former Met. There aren't enough words to tell you how much I love Ty Kelly. He's just a great guy, good, solid baseball player. And it was funny. I always loved it when Mets fans would complain about Ty Kelly being there. I was like, how can anyone not be happy that Ty Kelly's there? Like, he's just, is he going to do anything that's going to put you in the playoffs? No, but he is just like the perfect plug for any hole in the boat. If there's a hole in the boat, throw Ty Kelly at it. He will fix the hole. He'll be fine for at least a couple of days. I love Ty Kelly. Yeah, it was a phenomenal. Sam Fold, who's now the GM of the Philadelphia Phillies, just another wonderful, wonderful guy. We were spoiled with the amount of guys that we had that were just wonderful people, and I don't have enough nice things to say about everybody involved. And I'm looking forward to the next WBC. I think WBC has been growing. I don't think it's been perfect, but I definitely think, I mean, some of the ball games, watching Puerto Rico in the last WBC, that is to this day the most exciting baseball team I've ever watched play. It was just so much fun. Seeing USA finally win one and finally seeing somebody take down Japan was cool. I got to play against Japan in Japan. You know, that was the Tokyo Dome, the loudest place I've ever been in my life. Just unbelievable. Playing in Seoul, Korea was just a great experience. It was great. Best memories of my career. I have a lot of them. I'm very lucky with my memories. I remember one of the worst and best all in the same day. I got told I wasn't going to the big leagues, and it was the worst. Had a great year. I mean, I hit 270, hit 30 homers, but I only had like 400 at bats, and I was really going off, especially at the end of the year. So everyone was like, it was almost like a ongoing joke at this point for like 3 years that I hadn't been called up. So this one's a shoe-in, obviously. And we just got a new GM, and I was told a couple months earlier I'm going up in September no matter what. Then we hired AJ Preller, and I get called. I'm not going to the big leagues. I'm just like, what? And it was a real heartbreaking moment. My manager was Pat Murphy. He was heartbroken for me. Some of my teammates were pretty heartbroken for me. It was a tough news to get, and I just didn't understand how I didn't get called up. And then I remember it was in El Paso. It was the first year we were playing in El Paso, and the city, it really adopted us and really adopted me as well. And I remember in the 9th inning, I had a good game. I homered in the first at bat, and then I K'd 3 times. Just for whatever reason. But I remember playing first base, and we were up by 3, and manager calls time, and he pulls me off the field so I can get a standing ovation. And I got a full-on standing ovation.
Wow.
and a curtain call. And I'm like, wow, that was really nice. I needed that. Because that day sucked. I mean, yeah, I homered that day, but I got told I'm not going to the big leagues, and I K'd 3 times. So it was a real wishy-washy day. But that was a great moment. And then obviously my last moment in Reno, Nevada, playing for the Diamondbacks, I hit a walk-off home run. Knew I was retiring. My teammates knew I was retiring. My family knew I was retiring. The fans didn't. The announcer knew, but didn't even let it slip. That was pretty impressive. But got a curtain call that night, and the fans didn't even know. I guess the fans, it was a sellout crowd, and the fans didn't even know what they were really giving me a curtain call for. They thought they were just giving me, and my teammates, my God. I'll never forget. I remember hitting the ball right off the bat. I always knew when I homered. I was a power guy. I knew when the ball was gone. I hit this, and right off the bat, I'm like, long gone. But my first thought was, but here's the thing: I never pimped home runs. And it wasn't because I didn't have style. I don't have style. Let's be real clear. I have no flashiness. I'm Jewish. There's nothing cool about me flipping a bat. But it's not that I can't do it. It's just that it's in the back of my head. I'm so paranoid that if, say, it hits a pigeon or a lightning bolt just comes down and somehow hits the ball, or the Earth's polarity shifts in that moment. Well, if I'm not on second base, I'm going to be pissed. So I take my ass takes off to make sure no matter what, I'm at least getting an extra base, if not more. Looking back, I kind of regret that style of play. I really would like to have some videos of me pimping some home runs, but listen, that's how I did it. So that ball I hit, and I'm like, I'm going to pimp this. But I'm like, I hit the ball like 468 feet. Wow. I knew it was gone, but still, I'm like, it's a little low. It's a tall fence. You should probably run. So I took off. And normally when I know it's gone, I slow down, but I was so jacked, I just sprinted around the bases the entire way. And my teammates were hugging me for so long, and I remember it didn't even dawn on me. This was my last at bat. I go in the dugout, and I'm putting it wasn't until after we were all hugging each other for a while that I put my helmet in the cubby hole, and that's when it dawned on me. I'm like, this is the last time I'm putting my helmet. This is it. I'm done. And I looked at my right, and Johnny Gomes is like standing right here with his face just staring at me. Hey, Johnny. And he's just like, hey, Dak. I'm like, I'm retiring. He's like, I know. It's awesome. He just grabs my bat and he runs away. He was putting in a thing for me. He's like, that bat never touches a baseball again. It's my parents' house. It's on their wall. And then I start to grab my stuff, and it's weird, and everything's kind of a blur at this moment, and I'm not realizing that all my teammates from the dugout left all their stuff and they sprinted down. As you know, the celebration was going. You know, we're all hugging each other. We're all position players, but the bullpen is 20 guys, you know, down there in deep right center field. So they weren't there for that. So I'm going in the dugout, and it doesn't register that everybody is there. There were about 30 guys because we had 4 guys on the Phantom IL who were, you know, and a couple of taxi squad guys who just got there. And so it's 30 guys, and I didn't realize they're all in the dugout. And I'm trying to go into the clubhouse, and they're all just stopping me. What are you guys doing? And I look around, I'm surrounded by 30 guys, and they grab me and pick me up and throw me back out on the field because the crowd was still cheering, and they gave me a curtain call. Wow. And then my teammates were on the top step and giving me a standing ovation. That was something. Waved to everybody, went inside, and they gave me I had a teammate that bought me that day. He's like, hey, you like drinking tequila, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, you're an Añejo guy? He said, I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay, be back. Comes back, and he brings me back a full gallon glass bottle of Don Julio Añejo. I was just like, I didn't even know you can find that. It's like, me neither, but I found it. It was like $200. Like, anyways, you should be good for at least a couple of months. I said, yeah, I should. And I remember I get in the clubhouse, and everybody's giving me speeches, and I gave a speech back that was maybe 15 seconds because I'm like, listen, I'm going to wrap this up because I'm literally going to cry. So thank you guys. Best team ever, best group of guys I ever played with. And then I remember he stood up. He was stuck behind me in my locker. He grabs, he's like, remember I said a few months? It's gone today. And then we put it out. Everybody cheers, and everybody's just doing shots. And we took it with us to a bar, and everybody celebrated the night. And it was just, it was a great way to hang up the spikes. You know, the only downside is that, I mean, if you can call it a downside, the only downside, it wasn't in the big leagues. But you know, I was the real life Crash Davis. I was a AAA guy. So really, there is nowhere else it should have been other than in AAA.
That's amazing. That's so cool. And you're a baseball lifer. You're going to be on the grind from everything that you're doing forever now. It's so cool. Thank you so much for taking some time with us. This was great. Hopefully we'll get, as the season goes on, we'll talk to you again. But, everybody at home, we'll be back after the Cardinals series. Hopefully the Mets can get back on track, win another series. But until then, we'll see you then. Get Metsmerized.